The blood was not supposed to be his. That was the first thought that crossed my mind when I saw him fall. Not what have I done. Not run. Not even help him. Just that. The blood was not supposed to be his. Alpha King Draven, the man they called the Eternal Fong, the wolf who had not bled in 40 years of rule, was on his knees in front of me. His silver crown had rolled across the stone floor. His black fur cloak pooled around him like a dying shadow. His eyes, gold as forged fire, cold as a winter moon, were locked onto mine. And they were afraid. Not of death. Of me. What? He rasped. His voice, that voice that had commanded 1,000 wolves into war, cracked like old wood. What are you? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. 3 minutes ago, I had been on my knees too, bleeding, shaking, begging him to spare me. 3 minutes ago, I had been exactly what everyone always said I was. Nothing. Nobody. Lena the Omega. Lena the weak. Lena who couldn't even shift properly under a full moon. And then something inside me had opened. Not slowly. Not gently. Like a locked door kicked off its hinges. Like a scream that had been buried underground for 20 years finally clawing its way to the surface. Heat had poured through my hands. Not fire, not lightning, something older. Something that had no name in any language I had ever been taught. And the most powerful alpha alive had crumpled to the stone. He was still breathing. Barely. His pack, 40 of the deadliest wolves in the 4 kingdoms, stood frozen at the edges of the great hall. No one moved. No one dared. Because they had all felt it. Whatever had just come out of me. And in that silence, that terrible, crackling, world-changing silence, I understood one thing with perfect clarity. My life, as I had known it, was over. And something else had just begun. Chapter 1, The Girl at the Bottom. Let me tell you what it feels like to be an Omega in a world built for alphas. It feels like wearing a sign you cannot take off. You wake up every morning, and the sign is still there. Lesser. Smaller. Beneath. I had worn mine since I was 6 years old. The day my wolf failed to answer the first call. Every pup answers the first call. It is the moment the beast inside you stirs, recognizes itself, reaches back toward the moon's pull. Every pup. Except me. My name is Lena Vane. I am 22 years old. Was, the lowest-ranking Omega in Ashenford Pack, a mid-tier territory nestled in the shadow of the Greyspine Mountains. Ashenford was not a cruel pack, not truly. But packs have a way of becoming whatever their hierarchy demands. And hierarchy demands that someone be at the bottom. For as long as anyone could remember, that someone was me. I hauled water from the stream at dawn while the warriors trained. I mended furs and sharpened knives I was never allowed to carry. I cooked meals I ate last, slept in the hall's corner nearest the draft, and learned very early that invisibility was its own kind of armor. But invisibility has limits. And today it had failed me entirely. Move. The voice belonged to Clara, beta female, broad-shouldered, beautiful in the way a sharpened blade is beautiful. She didn't wait for me to step aside. She walked through me, shoulder-checking me into the stone wall of the supply corridor so hard that my basket of dried herbs scattered across the floor. 3 other wolves followed her, each one stepping on something as they passed. Lavender. Wolfsbane root. 2 weeks of careful gathering. Ground into the dust. No one looked back. I crouched down and began to collect what I could salvage. My hands were steady. That was the thing about being broken in so many small ways for so long. You stopped flinching. Still on the floor, Vane? I looked up. Dex. Kara's younger brother. 16 years old and already twice my rank. He crouched down to my level, tilting his head with mock sympathy. I heard the summit is coming. Alpha King Draven will be here in 3 days. He smiled. They'll probably make you serve at the feast. Try not to embarrass us. He flicked one of the crushed herb stems at my face and walked away laughing. I stayed on the floor a moment longer. Not because I was broken, but because I was thinking. The Alpha King's summit. Once every 4 years, Alpha King Draven called the pack leaders to his traveling court. A rolling procession of power that moved from territory to territory, assessing loyalty, settling disputes, collecting tribute. This year, his court had chosen Ashenford. Our Alpha, Brennan, had been anxious for a month. The warriors had drilled twice daily. Even the pack's Omegas had been given new tasks, cleaning, preparing, making everything shine. Everyone was nervous about impressing the Alpha King. I was not nervous about impressing him. I was nervous about surviving him. Because I had heard stories. Everyone had heard stories about Draven Ashvale, the alpha who had never lost a challenge. The king who had once collapsed a rival's entire pack structure with a single decree. The wolf whose dominance aura was so powerful that lesser wolves fainted in his presence. 3 days. I gathered the rest of my herbs, stood up, brushed the stone dust off my worn gray tunic, and went back to work. That night, I lay in my corner of the great hall and stared at the ceiling. The fire had burned low. Most of the others were asleep, their breathing slow and deep. My wolf, the fragile, barely there presence that had always lived inside me like an ember that refused to fully light, stirred. Just once. A small pulse. A flicker of heat behind my ribs. I pressed my hand against my sternum and felt it. Quiet, I told it. Whatever you are. Quiet. It settled. But it did not go out. 3 days later, I would understand why. He came with thunder. Not real thunder. The sky was clear, winter pale and sharp. But that was the only word for it. The gates of Ashenford Stone Keep swung open at midday, and the Alpha King's procession entered with the kind of weight that made the air feel different. 40 wolves in black leather and dark fur. War standards bearing a silver crescent moon on black. Horses draped in ceremonial cloth, breath steaming in the cold. And at the center, him. I was standing at the far edge of the courtyard with the other Omegas, holding a tray of welcome wine that I was supposed to offer to lower-ranked members of the procession. I had told myself I wouldn't look. I looked. Draven Ashvale dismounted in one fluid motion. No flourish, no performance. Just a large, dark-cloaked figure dropping from a horse like gravity was something he had negotiated personally. He was taller than I expected. Broader. His hair was black and slightly overgrown, as if cutting it had simply never seemed worth the time. His jaw was set, his expression neutral in the way that only the truly powerful can manage. Not bored, not cold, but utterly contained. He wore no crown on the road. He didn't need one. The dominance rolled off him in waves. I felt it from 30 feet away. A pressure against my skin, like standing too close to a waterfall, like the air before a lightning strike. Around me, the Omegas were trembling. Marta, the eldest, had gone pale. Young Pip, barely 15, made a small whimpering sound and dropped his eyes to the ground. My tray rattled once. And then, something strange happened. The pressure hit me, and my wolf pushed back. Not hard, not defiantly, just held, like a small fire refusing to be blown out. I didn't tremble. I didn't look away. And in the middle of his survey of the courtyard, that sweeping, dismissive gaze that alphas used to catalog everything at once, Draven Ashvale's eyes landed on me. 1 second, maybe 2, and something crossed his face. Not recognition, not interest, confusion, like a man who had expected to walk through a room and found one wall inexplicably in the wrong place. Then it was gone. He looked away. He walked into the keep. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Beside me, Marta grabbed my arm. "Don't," she whispered. Her grip was fierce. "Whatever that was, don't." "I didn't do anything," I said. "I know." She didn't let go. That's what frightens me. The feast that evening was enormous. Long tables in the great hall, firelight from a dozen iron chandeliers, the smell of roasted meat and pine smoke, and the particular tension of 40 visiting wolves sitting in someone else's territory. I served. That was my role. Move quietly. Refill cups. Disappear between tasks. I was good at it, but the night had a current running through it that I couldn't name. I noticed the way Brennan, our alpha, leaned forward when Draven spoke, eager, almost desperate. I noticed the way Draven's second, a wolf named Harik with pale eyes and a thin scar across his lip, watched the room like he was cataloging exits. I noticed the whispering, not the open kind. The pulled clothes, hands covering mouths, gone the moment you turned kind. Something was happening here. Something beneath the surface of the feast. I was refilling the far end of a table when I heard the word clearly for the first time. Vane. I stopped. 2 of Draven's wolves, lower-ranked soldiers, were talking quietly over their cups. "The Vane line? Here," the first said. That's what Harik said. He caught the trace on the way in. A pause. Faint. Very faint. But he recognized it. The moon's blood. They really thought it was gone. It was supposed to be. The king had the whole line. They stopped, because I had moved and my shadow had fallen across them. 2 pairs of eyes snapped to me. The silence was sudden and total. I set down the pitcher of wine with careful hands. "Can I bring you anything else?" I asked. They said nothing. I walked away. But my heart was hammering. The vain line. My name. What did they know about my name? I couldn't sleep. The hall had gone dark and quiet. Everyone settled after the feast. The visiting wolves had been given the upper rooms. Those of us who lived here returned to our usual places. My usual place was the corner near the east wall, with a thin wool blanket and a pack that contained everything I owned. A change of clothing, a bone-handled knife too small to be useful in a fight, a leather cord, and a small carved stone my mother had left me. My mother, Clara Vane. She had died when I was 4. I had no memory of her face, only impressions, warmth, the smell of cedar, a low humming voice. I had always been told she was an Omega too. Quiet, unremarkable. The Vane line. I turned the carved stone over in my fingers. It was smooth from years of handling. A small oval dark gray, with a symbol on one face that I had never been able to identify. Not letters. Not any pack mark I recognized. Something older. I pressed my thumb against it, and the ember inside me, that small, persistent heat that had lived behind my ribs since I could remember, pulsed. Once. Hard. Like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I sat up sharply. The stone was warm. Not body warm from being held. Warm on its own. A faint, sourceless heat, as if something inside the rock had woken up. I dropped it. It hit the floor stone and lay there. Dark. Ordinary. Still. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I picked it up again. Cold this time. I held it in both hands, closed my eyes, and did something I had never done before. Not in 22 years of trying. Not in every frustrated, humiliating moon night when the others shifted and I stood there ordinary and unchanged. I stopped trying. Every other time, I had reached for my wolf with effort, with desperation, with the straining, clenching attempt of someone trying to move a boulder with their bare hands. This time, I just listened. The silence in the hall, the breathing of sleeping wolves, the low creak of the stone keep in the wind, and beneath all of it, a sound, deep, ancient, patient, not a growl, not a howl, something older than both. A hum. It moved through my chest like a vibration felt in bone rather than heard in air. My hands began to warm. Not painfully, like warming your hands at a fire. The carved stone in my palm glowed once, faintly, the symbol on its face lit from within like an ember in ash. And then a voice, not a voice, a knowing, pressed itself into my mind. Not yet. 2 words. Old and certain and achingly gentle. Not yet, little blood. But soon. The warmth faded. The stone went dark. I sat in my corner with my knees drawn to my chest, and my heart pounding so hard I was certain someone would wake. No one did. I did not sleep for the rest of the night. Morning came gray and cold. I was already at the stream when the sun rose, filling the water urns, watching my breath cloud in the winter air. I heard him before I saw him. Not sound exactly, more like a change in the air. That same waterfall pressure closer now. You. I turned. Harik, Draven's second, stood at the edge of the tree line. Pale eyes. Thin scar. Expression like something carved from flint. He wasn't looking at me the way people usually looked at Omegas. He was looking at me the way you look at something that might be dangerous. You're the one who serves at table, he said. Yes. My voice was steady. It surprised me. What's your name? A pause. Small but real. Lena. Last name. The water urn in my hands felt very heavy suddenly. Vane, I said. Something moved in his pale eyes. Not surprise, he'd already known. Confirmation. And with it, something that looked almost like dread. Come to the king's chambers before the 3rd bell, he said. Not a request. He turned and walked back into the trees without another word. I stood at the stream with cold water running over my fingers. What had they done to the Vane line? And why had they thought we were gone? Before the 3rd bell, I climbed the stairs to the upper chambers of Ashenford Keep. My palms were damp. My wolf, that ancient, patient hum, was quiet. Waiting. I knocked on the heavy oak door. Enter. The chamber was large, warmed by a fire in a stone hearth, lit by torches bracketed to the walls. Maps were spread across a table. A sword belt hung over a chair back. Simple. Functional. No excess. Draven Ashvale stood at the window, his back to me, looking out over the gray-spine peaks. I stepped inside. I did not kneel. Omegas were supposed to kneel before the king. I don't know why I didn't. My legs simply didn't move that way. He turned when I didn't make the expected sound of submission. Those gold eyes landed on me. Up close, they were extraordinary. Not warm like firelight, but bright like metal heated to its limit before it changes state. He looked at me for a long moment. Then, you didn't bow. No, I said. Interesting. He walked toward the table, hands clasped behind his back. You're Lena Vane. Yes. Do you know what that name means? The carved stone was in my tunic pocket. It pressed against my ribs like a small, warm coal. No, I said. Not yet. Something shifted in his expression. So small, so brief. But there. Not yet. The same words I had heard in the dark last night. Sit down, he said quietly. We need to talk about what you are. But we never got the chance. Because that was the moment Harik burst through the door. His face white, his hand on his sword hilt, and said 3 words that changed everything. They've found her. Chapter 4. They came for blood. Who found her? Draven's voice dropped an entire register. Not louder. Lower. The kind of low that meant the man speaking had moved past alarm and into something colder. Something that made the torches in the room seem to dim slightly, as if the fire itself was paying attention. Harik stepped fully into the chamber and pulled the door shut behind him. His pale eyes flicked to me once, quick, assessing, then back to the king. Vorkai scouts, he said. 3 of them, spotted crossing the northern ridge an hour ago. They're moving fast. Tracking formation. The name hit the room like a stone dropped into still water. Vorkai. Even I knew that name. Every wolf in the 4 kingdoms knew that name. The Vorkai were not a pack. They were a court. Ancient, sealed, and ruthless. A faction of wolves that operated outside pack law, answering to no alpha king, bound by their own blood-sworn code. They were hunters. Specialists. The kind you sent when you wanted someone found, and did not particularly care what condition they arrived in. Draven moved to the table. His hands pressed flat against the map. His jaw was set. 3 scouts means a larger group behind them, he said. Not to Harik. To himself. They wouldn't send scouts for an extraction. This is a termination, Harik said. The word fell into the room and sat there. I looked at Draven. They're here for me, I said. It wasn't a question. Draven looked up from the map. Those gold eyes settled on me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Something between calculation and something older. Something that looked almost like guilt. Yes, he said. Why? He was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Because of what you carry. Which is what exactly? My voice was harder than I intended. Harder than an Omega's voice was supposed to be. Neither of them flinched at it. That told me something. There isn't time to, Harik began. Make time. I stepped forward. The warmth behind my ribs flared. A quick, involuntary pulse. Both men stilled. Harik's hand moved fractionally toward his sword. Draven's did not. He held my gaze. The Vane line, he said carefully, carries something the packs call Morthane, the moon's original fire. The first power before wolves learned to shift, before pack law, before hierarchy. He paused. It was thought to be extinct. Your mother was the last confirmed carrier, and when she died, you thought it died with her, I said. We hoped it had, he said quietly. That landed differently than I expected. Not we thought. Not we assumed. We hoped. You wanted it gone, I said. He didn't look away. Yes. I had expected him to dress it up. To code it in politics or necessity or the greater good. He didn't. That was almost more frightening than the Vorkai. And now? I asked. Before he could answer, a horn sounded from the courtyard below. Low. Long. 3 short bursts. Alarm call. Harik was already moving. They're at the gate, he said. They didn't wait for dark. Draven straightened. He was already reaching for his sword belt. Take her to the East Passage, he told Harik. No. The word came out of me before I'd decided to say it. Both men looked at me. I'm not going to hide in a passage, I said. If they're here for me, I want to know what they want. You know what they want, Harik said flatly. I just said it. Then I want to look them in the eye when they say it. A beat of silence. Draven looked at me with that unreadable expression again. She has her mother's stubbornness, Harik muttered. Draven said nothing. He simply buckled his sword belt, swept his dark fur cloak back into place, and moved toward the door. Stay close, he said. To me. Not to Harik. And I followed the man I was apparently destined to kill, not knowing yet what was coming. not knowing that in less than an hour, the world would crack open. The courtyard was chaos contained by discipline. Ashenford's warriors had formed a loose perimeter inside the gate. Brennan stood at the front, our alpha, visibly frightened but holding his position. Outside the gate, visible through the iron bars, 5 wolves. Not the 3 scouts Harik had mentioned. 5. They wore black. Not the formal black of Draven's court, but the rough, functional black of people who dressed for hunting and nothing else. No pack markings. No ceremonial anything. One of them was a woman. She stood at the front. Tall, sharp-featured, with close-cropped dark hair and eyes the color of old rust. She looked at the gate the way a butcher looks at a counter. Professionally. Clinically. With complete absence of doubt. When Draven appeared in the courtyard, her rust-colored eyes moved to him without surprise. "Ashvale," she said. Her voice carried easily over the space. Flat, efficient. "We have no quarrel with the crown today. You crossed into my traveling court's territory without announcement," Draven said. His voice was completely level. "That is a quarrel with the crown. A technicality." She almost smiled. "Stand aside. Give us the girl. We'll be gone before nightfall. And what becomes of the girl? That's not your concern. I'm making it my concern." A pause. Something shifted in her expression. "You know what she is," the woman said quietly. "You know what she carries. You know what happens when Morthane wakes in an unstable vessel." She tilted her head. "You've seen it before, Ashvale. You know what we're preventing." Something moved through the crowd. Not a sound, a feeling. A shift in the air, like a change in pressure before a storm. I was standing at the edge of the courtyard, partially behind one of Draven's soldiers. And I was looking at the woman outside the gate. And she was looking back at me. Past the soldier. Past the distance. Directly at me. Her rust-colored eyes narrowed. "There she is," she said softly. The carved stone in my pocket blazed hot. Not warm. Hot. I pressed my hand against it through the fabric and felt it burning. Not painfully, but urgently, the way a coal burns when you blow on it. "Not yet, little blood." The words came again from that deep, ancient place inside me. Not yet. But the Vorkai woman had already given a signal. 2 fingers raised. A quiet gesture. And the wolves behind her moved. The kind you sent when you wanted someone found and did not particularly care what condition they arrived in. Draven moved to the table. His hands pressed flat against the map. His jaw was set. 3 scouts means a larger group behind them, he said. Not to Harik. To himself. They wouldn't send scouts for an extraction. "This is a termination," Harik said. The word fell into the room and sat there. I looked at Draven. "They're here for me," I said. It wasn't a question. Draven looked up from the map. Those gold eyes settled on me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Something between calculation and something older. Something that looked almost like guilt. "Yes," he said. "Why?" He was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. "Because of what you carry." "Which is what exactly?" My voice was harder than I intended. Harder than an Omega's voice was supposed to be. Neither of them flinched at it. That told me something. "There isn't time to," Harik began. "Make time." I stepped forward. The warmth behind my ribs flared. A quick, involuntary pulse. Both men stilled. Harik's hand moved fractionally toward his sword. Draven's did not. He held my gaze. "The vein line," he said carefully, "carries something the packs call Morthane. The moon's original fire. The first power before wolves learned to shift, before pack law, before hierarchy." He paused. "It was thought to be extinct. Your mother was the last confirmed carrier, and when she died, you thought it died with her," I said. "We hoped it had," he said quietly. "That landed differently than I expected. Not we thought. Not we assumed. We hoped. You wanted it gone," I said. He didn't look away. Yes, I had expected him to dress it up. To code it in politics or necessity or the greater good. He didn't. That was almost more frightening than the Vorkai. "And now?" I asked. Before he could answer, a horn sounded from the courtyard below. Low. Long. 3 short bursts. Alarm call. Harik was already moving. "They're at the gate," he said. They didn't wait for dark. Draven straightened. He was already reaching for his sword belt. "Take her to the East Passage," he told Harik. "No." The word came out of me before I decided to say it. Both men looked at me. "I'm not going to hide in a passage," I said. "If they're here for me, I want to know what they want." "You know what they want," Harik said flatly. I just said it. Then I want to look them in the eye when they say it. A beat of silence. Draven looked at me with that unreadable expression again. She has her mother's stubbornness, Harik muttered. Draven said nothing. He simply buckled his sword belt, swept his dark fur cloak back into place, and moved toward the door. Stay close, he said. To me, not to Harik. And I followed the man I was apparently destined to kill, not knowing yet what was coming, not knowing that in less than an hour, the world would crack open. The courtyard was chaos contained by discipline. Ashenford's warriors had formed a loose perimeter inside the gate. Brennan stood at the front, our alpha, visibly frightened but holding his position. Outside the gate, visible through the iron bars, 5 wolves. Not the 3 scouts Harik had mentioned. 5. They wore black. Not the formal black of Draven's court, but the rough, functional black of people who dressed for hunting and nothing else. No pack markings. No ceremonial anything. One of them was a woman. She stood at the front. Tall, sharp-featured, with close-cropped dark hair and eyes the color of old rust. She looked at the gate the way a butcher looks at a counter. Professionally. Clinically. With complete absence of doubt. When Draven appeared in the courtyard, her rust-colored eyes moved to him without surprise. Ashvale, she said. Her voice carried easily over the space. Flat, efficient. We have no quarrel with the crown today. You crossed into my traveling court's territory without announcement, Draven said. His voice was completely level. That is a quarrel with the crown. A technicality. She almost smiled. Stand aside. Give us the girl. We'll be gone before nightfall. And what becomes of the girl? That's not your concern. I'm making it my concern. A pause. Something shifted in her expression. You know what she is, the woman said quietly. You know what she carries. You know what happens when Morthane wakes in an unstable vessel. She tilted her head. You've seen it before, Ashvale. You know what we're preventing. Something moved through the crowd. Not a sound, a feeling. A shift in the air, like a change in pressure before a storm. I was standing at the edge of the courtyard, partially behind one of Draven's soldiers. And I was looking at the woman outside the gate. And she was looking back at me. Past the soldier. Past the distance. Directly at me. Her rust-colored eyes narrowed. There she is, she said softly. The carved stone in my pocket blazed hot. Not warm. Hot. I pressed my hand against it through the fabric and felt it burning. Not painfully, but urgently, the way a coal burns when you blow on it. Not yet, little blood. The words came again from that deep, ancient place inside me. Not yet. But the Vorkai woman had already given a signal. 2 fingers raised. A quiet gesture. And the wolves behind her moved. I pressed my hand to my sternum and felt it pulse, steady and slow, patient as a tide. Morthane, Draven had called it. The moon's original fire. My mother had carried it. And she had not survived it. You're an Omega child. A weak one. When Morthane fully wakes, it will burn through you. The Vorkai woman's words sat in my chest alongside the warmth. A threat inside a gift. Or a gift inside a threat. I didn't know which. The door opened after what felt like an hour. Harik. He came in alone, closed the door behind him, stood against the wall with his arms crossed. He looked at me for a long time without speaking. I waited. He's stable, he said finally. The relief that moved through me was embarrassingly large. I didn't examine why. What did I do to him? I asked. What Morthane does when it releases uncontrolled, Harik said. It disrupts the alpha bond. I stared at him. What does that mean? Every alpha carries a bond, a current, a living connection to their dominance, to their wolves. It's what makes them alpha. He paused. What you did hit that bond like a hammer. It didn't break it, but he searched for the word, fractured it, temporarily. So he lost his power? For a time. Some of it. That's what put him on his knee. Yes, I thought about that. The most powerful alpha alive. On his knee. Because something had come out of me involuntarily, defensively, like a sneeze I couldn't stop. How long until he's already standing, Harik said. Dry. Almost amused. The man is unreasonably difficult to keep down. That was absurdly a relief. What happens now? I asked. That, Harik said, is what I've been sent to discuss. He uncrossed his arms, moved to sit on the crate opposite me. For the first time since I'd met him, Harik looked like something other than an extension of the king's will. He looked tired. The Vorkai will be back, he said. What happened in that courtyard will be relayed to whoever sent them within the day. And whoever sent them will understand what it means. That Morthane is alive. That it's alive, it's stronger than expected, and its vessel is an untrained Omega in a mid-tier mountain pack. He met my eyes. Which means you have approximately 2 to 3 days before half the interested parties in the 4 kingdoms know where you are. The room felt smaller suddenly. Interested parties, I repeated. The Vorkai won't be the last faction that wants you dead, he said. And they won't be the only ones who want you alive. Morthane hasn't been seen in 20 years. There are packs, councils, ancient houses that have been waiting for it to resurface. Some to contain it. Some to, he paused. To use it, I said. Yes. I looked at my hands again. The hands that had put the Alpha King on his knee without touching him. What does Draven want? I asked. A pause. Come and ask him yourself, a voice said. Not Herrick's voice. I looked up. The door had opened. And Draven Ashvale stood in the doorway. He looked, not diminished. Not weakened. But human, in a way he hadn't seemed before. There was a line of shadow under his gold eyes. His jaw was tight with something that might have been effort, or might have been pain. He had not put on his fur cloak. Just the dark leather, the sword at his hip, his sleeves rolled back to the wrist. He looked at me across the small storage room. You wanted to ask me something, he said. I stood. Not because protocol demanded it. Because something in me refused to have this conversation sitting down. What do you want? I asked. With me. With what I carry. He was quiet for a moment. Honestly, he said. Please. When I heard the vein line might still be alive, he said carefully, I came to Ashenford to confirm it. And if confirmed, he stopped. To what? I pressed. His gold eyes held mine. To do what the Vorkai were going to do, he said. More cleanly. More mercifully. But the same outcome. The words hit me like cold water. He had come here to kill me too. He wasn't flinching from it. Wasn't dressing it up. Just saying it. But, I said. Because there was clearly a but. But what happened in the courtyard changed my assessment, he said. Because I'm useful now. Because you're different now, he said, and there was something in his voice that wasn't cold, wasn't calculated. Something that sounded almost raw. The Morthane your mother carried was unstable. Uncontrolled. When it woke in her it was catastrophic. She couldn't direct it, couldn't contain it. It tore through everything. He paused. What you did in that courtyard. You held it. For a moment. You pushed it in a direction. I didn't push anything, I said. It just came out. You held it long enough not to kill me, he said quietly. That is more than your mother managed. The silence stretched. I thought of a woman I couldn't remember. Cedar smell. Warm hands. A humming voice. A woman who had carried this same fire and burned. So now you don't want me dead, I said. No. What do you want instead? He held my gaze for a long, steady moment. I want to know if what you carry can be learned, he said. If it can be controlled. Directed. His voice was even. Because if you can, then you are not a threat to be eliminated. What am I then? The gold in his eyes shifted. That forge fire color, heated past its limit. Something this world hasn't seen in a very long time, he said. And then quieter. And something every power in the 4 kingdoms is about to come for. He let that land. Then. We leave for Thornwall at first light. You'll travel with my court. As what? As someone under the protection of the crown. A pause. For now, that's enough. He turned to leave. Draven. He stopped. The name had left my mouth without permission. Not my lord. Not your majesty. Just his name. He turned back slowly. Why did you tell me the truth? I asked. About what you came here to do. He considered it. Because you'll need to know what kind of man I am, he said. If we're going to do what I think we're going to have to do. What's that? He looked at me for one more long moment. Survive, he said simply. And walked out. My mother, who had carried Morthane and burned. Who had died when I was 4. Who had left me a carved stone and a name and nothing else. Who, apparently, had not been as unknown as I had always believed. Who? I said. Draven turned his horse forward. Someone who is either going to help you very much, he said, or confirm everything we're afraid of. He clicked his tongue at the horse and moved forward down the dark path. I stared at his back. What aren't you telling me? But the forest was quiet and the moon was thin and we were riding fast towards something I didn't understand yet. And somewhere in the dark behind us, breathing, patient, immense. Something that was made of my power was following. Thornwall was not what I expected. I had imagined a castle. Something grand, fortified, befitting a location the Alpha King considered significant enough to ride through the dark to reach. What I found was older than grand. It rose from the edge of a cliffside like it had grown there. Not built, grown. Dark stone, shot through with veins of something that caught the early morning light and held it. Not quite silver. Not quite gold. Something between. The walls were low in some places, towering in others, following the natural contour of the cliff rather than imposing geometry on it. Thorn vines, the dense, thorned climbing plant the fortress was named for, covered entire sections of the outer wall. Not neglected. Intentional. The thorns were part of the defense. Old and massive and woven into the stone like they had been growing there for centuries. Because they had. Who built this? I asked. Harik rode up beside me as we approached the gate. No one knows, he said. It predates every pack record. Every kingdom record. He paused. It was here before alphas had kings. I looked at the walls. At the vines. At the stone that glowed with that strange not quite color. The carved stone at my throat was warm. Not blazing like last night. Just warm. Comfortable. Like recognizing somewhere you've been before. I had never been here before. I know this place, I said quietly. No, Harik said. But your blood does. The gate opened before we reached it. Not by guards. There were no visible guards. It simply opened. Stone pivoting on ancient hinges, smooth and silent, as if it had been waiting for precisely this arrival. Draven didn't react to this. He rode through without pause. The courtyard inside was small and moss-covered. A single massive tree stood at its center. Leafless in the winter cold, but enormous, its trunk wider than 3 men standing shoulder to shoulder, its bare branches spreading overhead like the ribs of a cathedral. Beneath the tree, an old woman. Small, wrapped in gray furs, her white hair braided and pinned with bone. Her face was a map of age. Not frailty age. The kind that comes from surviving things. She was looking at me before I had fully dismounted. Not at Draven. Not at the soldiers. At me. Her eyes were the color of the stone walls. That strange between color, not quite silver, not quite gold. She has her mother's face, the old woman said. Her voice was low and clear, and carried the way voices carry in large stone spaces. And her mother's timing, she added, dry as old bark. Always arriving when things have already gone wrong. Sable, Draven said. A greeting. A warning. Both at once. Boy King, she replied. Harik made a small sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. The old woman's strange eyes moved back to me. Come here, child, she said. I looked at Draven. He said nothing, which I had already learned was his way of saying your choice. I walked toward her. The moss was soft underfoot. The bare tree above us creaked slightly in the wind. The old woman, Sable, watched me approach without moving. When I stopped in front of her, she reached up with one small, gnarled hand and pressed her palm flat against the carved stone at my throat. The warmth flared. She didn't flinch. There it is, she murmured. Soft. Almost tender. Hello, old thing. I wondered when you'd surface. She dropped her hand. Looked at my face. I knew your mother, she said. I was with her when she died. The words hit me somewhere deep and old. Tell me, I said. Yes, she said. I will. But not standing in a courtyard. She turned and moved toward the fortress entrance, small and unhurried. Come inside. All of you. A pause. Draven. We need to talk about what you haven't told her yet. She didn't look back. But I did. I looked at Draven. He was looking at the ground. The first time I had seen him look anywhere but forward. What haven't you told me? I followed the old woman inside. The inner hall of Thornwall was lit by a fire larger than any I had seen. Not in an iron chandelier. In an open pit at the hall's center, ringed with stone, the flames burning steady and high and somehow clean. No smoke. No wavering. Just clear, constant light. We sat around it, Sable in a carved chair that might have been a throne once, Draven and Harik standing near the wall, and me on a low bench across from the old woman. The soldiers had stayed outside. Just us. Sable poured something from a clay pot into a cup and handed it to me. Hot. Bitter. Herbal. I held it and waited. Your mother's name was Alara Vane, Sable began. But she was not born in Ashenford. She was born here. In this fortress. the last daughter of the Vane bloodline, which is the oldest surviving lineage of moon-touched wolves in all 4 kingdoms. I said nothing. Morthane runs in Vane blood the way sight runs in eyes, Sable continued. It's not given. It's not learned. It is simply there, as natural as breathing. In some generations it sleeps. In others, it wakes, I said. It wakes, she agreed. Clara was the strongest carrier in 6 generations. The power in her was extraordinary. A pause. And completely ungovernable. She couldn't control it. She could not. We tried, here in this fortress. Clara and I worked for years to find a method, a practice, a ritual that would give her some mastery over it. Sable's voice was even, but something moved behind her eyes. We failed. What happened? Sable looked at the fire. There was a summit, she said. 22 years ago. A gathering of the 4 Alpha Councils. Clara attended as a representative of the old bloodlines. She was young. She was frightened. And there were wolves there who pushed her. Deliberately, knowing what she carried. Wanting to see what would happen when Morthane released in an uncontrolled space. The fire crackled. It killed 4 wolves, Sable said quietly. And it destroyed something in Clara. Some wall between the power and herself that we could never rebuild. After that night, she burned with it constantly. It ate at her. I felt very still. She survived another 4 years, Sable said. Long enough to have you. Long enough to bring you here once, when you were an infant, to let me see you. Her strange eyes met mine. Long enough to carve that stone and press it into my hands and say, give this to her when she's old enough. It will remind the power of who it belongs to. I pressed my fingers against the stone at my throat. She knew she wouldn't survive, I said. She knew. Sable's voice was very gentle. She also knew that what was in you was different from what was in her. The same root but a different quality. She felt it when you were born. Different how? Sable leaned forward. Clara's Morthane was like a river that had no banks, she said. It flowed everywhere, powerful and ungovernable. Yours is more like... She searched for words. Water that remembers it can become ice. It has the same source, but it holds its form. It has edges. I thought about the courtyard, the wave that had come out of me, how it had moved outward and then stopped. Not because I had controlled it, but as if it had controlled itself. That's why I'm still alive, I said slowly. When Morthane released, it hit Draven, disrupted his bond, but it didn't. Kill him, Sable said. Yes. Your mother would have killed everyone in that courtyard. She paused. You chose a target, even unconsciously. The most dominant presence in the space. I didn't choose. Your power did, she said, which means some part of you directed it. I sat with that. Behind me, Draven shifted. A small movement. Weight redistributed, the soft sound of leather. I turned to look at him. He was watching me. That gold gaze, steady and complicated. What do you know about this? I asked him. A beat. Tell her, Sable said. Not a suggestion. Draven pushed off from the wall. He came to stand at the edge of the fire pit, across from me. The firelight played across his features. Angular, controlled, giving very little away. But his hands, I noticed, were not quite still. He clasped them behind his back. The summit Sable described, he said. 22 years ago. He paused. I was there. Something cold moved through my chest. I was 17, he said. Not yet king. But there is heir at my father's side. His voice was flat, factual. The voice of someone reporting rather than confessing. The wolves who provoked your mother at that summit, who pushed her deliberately. They were my father's allies. The fire crackled. Were you one of them? I asked. No, he said. Could you have stopped them? A longer pause. No, he said. Not at 17, with my father present. But, gold eyes met mine. But I watched it happen, he said. And I said nothing. Because I was 17 and afraid, and my father had made very clear what happened to heirs who challenged his alliances. He held my gaze. I have thought about it every year since, he said. For what that is worth. The silence was very full. I looked at this man who had ridden in the dark to protect me, who had told me clearly that he had come to kill me first, who had been 17 and silent while my mother's life was destroyed. I didn't know what to do with all of it, so I put it away, filed it somewhere to examine later, when surviving wasn't the immediate priority. What do we do now? I asked, directing it at Sable, because she felt like the safest person to direct anything at. Now, Sable said, We find out what you can actually do. Training. Not training. She shook her head. Training implies learning something new. You're not learning new material, child. You're remembering something ancient. She stood, small and certain, and picked up a torch from the wall. Follow me. She took me down, below the fortress, through passages cut from the living rock, lit by the same sourceless glow that shot through the outer walls. The carved stone at my throat was singing now. Not sound, vibration. Like a string plucked on an instrument, resonating through my whole chest. The passages opened into a chamber. Large. Circular. The walls covered floor to ceiling in markings. Not painted, cut into the stone, and filled with something that glowed with that strange between color. What is this place? I breathed. The Vain Keep, Sable said. The original heart of this fortress. It was built by your ancestors, the first Morthane carriers, as a space where the power could be expressed safely. She moved to the center of the chamber. The walls absorb it, redirect it. They cannot be damaged by Morthane. I looked at the markings. Hundreds of them. Thousands. What do the markings mean? Names, Sable said simply. Every Vane who has ever lived. Every carrier. Every line. I walked to the nearest wall. Pressed my fingertips to a marking. The vibration intensified. The stone at my throat blazed. I felt people. Not visions. Not voices. Just presence. Layered. Accumulated. A weight of lives lived and power carried, and the particular weariness and beauty of carrying something vast inside a human body. They're all here, I said. In a sense, Sable said. Morthane has memory. It holds traces of every vessel it has passed through. I pressed my hand flat against the wall. And then there. Different from the others. Warmer. More recent. More familiar, somehow, even though I had no conscious memory of it. Cedar. Warmth. A low humming voice. Mama, I whispered. I hadn't said that word in 22 years. Maybe ever. The wall pulsed. And something pulsed back. Not words. Not a voice. Just recognition. I am here. I was here. You are mine and I am yours and you are not alone. Asterisk. I had not known I was crying until I felt the warmth on my face. Behind me, Sable was quiet. I stood there for a long moment with my hand pressed to the stone and my mother's trace warming my palm. Then I breathed. Once. Slowly. Took my hand from the wall. Teach me, I said. My voice was steady. I turned to face the old woman. Teach me how to use what I have. Everything you know. Everything you tried with her. I paused. I am not my mother. What failed in her may not fail in me. Another pause. And I don't have the luxury of time. Sable looked at me. Those strange, between color eyes were very bright. No, she said. You don't. She nodded once. We start now. 3 days. That was how long Sable gave me before she said we had run out of time. In those 3 days, I learned more about myself than in 22 years of living. I learned that Morthane responds to stillness, not effort. The harder you push, the quieter it goes. I learned that the heat behind my ribs was not a weapon by nature, but a state. A fundamental aliveness that could become many things depending on how I held it. I learned that the Morthborn, the great black creature that had appeared in the forest, was both separate from me and an extension of me, the way a shadow is separate from its source. It appeared twice in those 3 days, in the chamber below Thornwall. The second time, I reached out and touched its flank. The fur was warm, dense, real. It turned and looked at me with those burning red eyes. You are less afraid, it said, in that way that was not quite sound. A little, I said. Good. A pause. They are coming. More than before. The Vorkai. And others. I didn't ask who. I was learning that Morthane, and the Morthborn, communicated in certainties. If it had wanted me to know who, it would have said. How long? Days. Perhaps less. It stepped back. Faded. I climbed back up to the main hall. I found Draven at the table in the main hall, maps spread in front of him, a cold cup of something forgotten at his elbow. He was alone. He looked up when I entered. How did it go? He asked. We had developed a functional shorthand over 3 days. Not friendship, not warmth exactly, but a kind of working language. Direct questions, direct answers. The Morthborn says they're coming, I said. Days. Maybe less. His jaw tightened. He looked back at the maps. I sat down across from him. For a moment, We were just two people looking at the same set of problems. You need to tell me your full plan, I said. He looked up. My full plan, he repeated. You brought me here. You're protecting me from factions that want me dead, and apparently from ones that want to use me. I met his gaze. You have a reason, a specific one, beyond the general interest in Morthane. I paused. What is it? A long silence. The fire in the pit burned steadily. There is a war coming, Draven said finally. There's always a war coming. Not like this one. He pressed two fingers against a point on the map, a territory in the far east, beyond the Four Kingdoms' formal borders. The packs beyond the Ashvale border have been unifying for 11 years. Quietly, carefully. I've been watching it. Unifying under what? Under a wolf who claims to carry power of the old kind, he said. Who has been telling the border packs that the Four Kingdoms are built on stolen foundations. That the alpha hierarchy as it currently exists was never meant to be permanent. That it was always supposed to yield to something older when the time came. He looked at me. He's right, he said. About the history. The alpha hierarchy was built as a governing structure, not a permanent order. There were always supposed to be checks on it. Old powers. Old bloodlines. He paused. Morthane being one of them. I stared at him. This wolf who's unifying the border packs, I said slowly. He's using that history as justification for war. Yes. And I need someone who actually carries old power, he said. Not someone who claims to. Not a pretender. Someone real, whose presence makes the claim inarguable. Who demonstrates that the old order is not dead, and that it does not endorse his war. I sat back. The full shape of it was becoming clear. You want to use me, I said. Carefully. Not accusingly. I want to give you a choice, he said. Which is more than you've ever been given. Not much of a choice if the alternative is letting this wolf burn through the Four Kingdoms. No, he admitted. Not much of a choice. I looked at the map. At the point his fingers had pressed. At the territory beyond the border. Who is he? I asked. This wolf. Draven was quiet for one moment. His name is Aaron Vale, he said. And 6 months ago, I received intelligence suggesting that he is the one who sent the Vorkai to find you. I looked up sharply. He wants me dead. He wants Morthane eliminated, Draven said. Because a real carrier complicates his claims. A real carrier could stand in front of the border packs and say, the old power is awake, and it does not choose him. He held my gaze. Which is why, he said, getting you out of Ashenford quietly was always going to be impossible. He knew you existed before I did. He's been watching for the line to resurface. And the Vorkai were hired by him. A pause. Yes. I pressed my hands flat on the table. Breathed. So your plan, I said. In clear terms. You want me to stand publicly beside the Alpha King's court and demonstrate that Morthane is real, is functional, and endorses the existing order. The existing order that I intend to reform significantly, he said. The Summit Sable described, that kind of deliberate cruelty, the political use of power against old bloodlines. That ends. I've been working toward it for 5 years. Am I supposed to believe that? Ask Sable, he said simply. She is not a woman who trusts easily. And she let me through that gate. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The gold eyes that were complicated and tired and carrying things. The man who had been 17 and silent, and had spent years since regretting it. The man who had told me the truth when he had no tactical reason to. I'm not doing this as a symbol, I said. Meaning, I won't stand next to you silently and look powerful while you make decisions, I said. If I'm putting Morthane in the middle of your war, if I'm making myself a target to complicate this Aaron Vale's claims, then I'm doing it with full knowledge and full voice. Not as a piece you move on the board. Something moved in his face. Not surprise exactly. Something that looked like relief. As if he had been braced for something easier. Something he would have had to distrust. Agreed, he said. A beat. Fully, he said. On my word as king. I studied him for a moment longer. And if I decide your plan is wrong, then tell me, he said. And we'll find a better one. I reached out and pressed one finger to the map, to the point he had marked. Tell me everything you know about Aaron Vale, I said. He did. We talked for 2 hours. Not as king and Omega. As two people trying to understand a problem larger than both of them. He told me about Aaron Vale, the border wolf, the strategist, the wolf who had built a coalition out of genuine grievances and historical truth, wrapped in ambition that had curdled into something dangerous. He told me about the four kingdoms' internal fractures, pack leaders who were wavering, old alliances that had gone cold. He told me about the letter that had arrived a week before the summit at Ashenford, an intelligence report that had changed his timeline. She is in Ashenford. The line is not dead. Move before Vale's agents do. I listened. I asked questions. He answered them. It was strange. Being in a conversation as a full participant. Not being talked at or talked over or talked around. Strange, and something that felt dangerously like something I could get used to. We were mid-sentence, him explaining the loyalty situation with one of the Eastern pack leaders. When I felt it, the carved stone went cold. Not cool. Cold. Ice cold. Fast. I sat up straight. Draven stopped talking. He read my face. What? I was already standing, turning toward the hall entrance. Something's wrong, I said. And then Harik appeared in the doorway at a dead run, which I had never seen him do. We have a problem, he said, breathing hard. A large problem. Vorka, Draven said, already rising. Worse. Harik's pale eyes cut to me. Aaron Vale is here, he said. Not his scouts. Not his agents. Him. He's at the Thornwall Gate with 40 wolves. The cold from the stone spread through my chest. Draven looked at me. In his gold eyes, not fear. Readiness. He came for you, he said, stating it clearly, so I could make my own choice with clear information. I held his gaze. The ancient hum behind my ribs rose. Patient. Sure. The Morthborn, somewhere below in the dark, stirring. Then let's not make him wait, I said. Aaron Vale was nothing like I expected. I had built a picture of him from Draven's words. A warlord. A strategist. Someone who had spent 11 years quietly assembling an army. I expected size. Aggression. The blunt force of a wolf who had fought his way to the top of a coalition. What came through the Thornwall Gate was something far more dangerous. He was lean. Not slight lean. The kind of body built by years of movement rather than brute strength. His hair was dark auburn, shot through with gray at the temples despite a face that looked no older than 35. He wore traveling furs, worn, well-made, practical, and no ceremonial markings. No crown. No war standard. Just a wolf in worn furs and 40 silent soldiers behind him. He walked into the moss-covered courtyard under the bare winter tree and stopped. Looked around. His eyes were the particular gray of deep water. Not cold, not warm. Deep. Like something that had no bottom. They moved across the courtyard with calm, systematic intelligence. Took in Draven's wolves. Took in Thornwall's walls. Took in Sable, standing near the entrance, small and still. Then settled on me. And stayed. I was standing slightly in front of Draven. Not deliberately, it had simply happened as we'd come through the door, and neither of us had rearranged it. I stood there now and let Aaron Vale look at me. The carved stone at my throat was still cold. So it's true, Vale said. His voice was quiet, measured. The kind of voice that had learned long ago that volume was a lesser tool than precision. Elara Vane's daughter. He tilted his head slightly. You have her eyes. I've been told, I said. A compliment, he said. She was remarkable. She's dead, I said. So the compliment has limits. Something moved in his gray eyes. Appreciation, maybe. The particular appreciation of someone who respected opponents. Yes, he said. She is. Partly due to the choices of the man standing behind you. Behind me, I felt Draven go very still. The summit was my father's doing, Draven said. His voice was even. Your father is dead, Vale said pleasantly. You are not. You inherited the kingdom and the debts. He spread his hands, an open gesture, almost reasonable. I don't say this with anger. I say it as context. Context for what? I asked. His gray eyes moved back to me. For why I'm here, he said. To talk. A pause. Around the courtyard, 40 wolves stood silent. Talk, I said. I was told you'd be dead by now, he said. The Vorkai were thorough. I was told the vein line would be closed before Morthane could fully wake. You told wrong, I said. Evidently. Something shifted in his expression. I want you to understand something, Lena Vane. Sending the Vorkai, that was not cruelty. That was strategy. An awake, uncontrolled Morthane in the middle of a political crisis is a catastrophe for every wolf in the four kingdoms. You decided that, I said. Without meeting me. Without knowing whether the power was controlled or not. I decided based on history, he said. Your mother is not me, I said. He stopped, studied me. No, he said slowly. I'm beginning to see that. He took one step forward. Herrick's hand moved to his sword. Vale didn't look at Herrick. I'm going to make you an offer, Vale said. A real one, not a threat dressed up in polite language. He held my gaze. Come with me. Not as a prisoner. Not as a weapon. As a voice. He paused. The border packs have real grievances, Lena. The alpha hierarchy has taken from them for generations. The old bloodlines, your bloodline, were suppressed deliberately. What they did to your mother wasn't an accident. It was policy. The words landed. Because they weren't wrong. He knew they weren't wrong. That was the particular poison of it. You're using true things, I said. To build a war. I'm using true things to build a correction, he said. Change that the four kingdoms will not make voluntarily. Change through what? I said. You have 40 wolves at my gate and an army building beyond the border. That's not correction. That's conquest. Sometimes they look the same from inside the walls, he said. From outside them too, I said. When you're the one being conquered. He was quiet for a moment. Those deep gray eyes were very focused. The offer stands, he said. You would be the emblem of what I'm fighting for. The old power returned. The bloodlines restored. You would be. A symbol, I said. A powerful one. I was just offered the same position by him, I said, tilting my head toward Draven without looking back. Different side. Same role. A beat. Vale's eyes moved briefly to Draven. Something passed between them. Not quite hatred, not quite respect. History. Old, complicated history. We're not the same, Vale said. You've both decided what I should be before speaking to me, I said. That's a beginning of sameness. Another silence. Longer this time. In the silence, I became aware of something. The Morthborn. I couldn't see it. It wasn't visible, not in daylight, not in the open. But I felt it. Close. Massive. Awake. And for the first time, something from it that wasn't patience or waiting. Anger. Not mine. The Morthborn's. It recognized something. Your wolves, I said slowly, not looking away from Vale. The 40 behind you. Where did you find them? A small pause. Barely there. They follow willingly, he said. That's not what I asked. His composure held. But something shifted under it. Several were recruited from disbanded packs, he said carefully. Disbanded how? The Alpha Council's rulings. Which packs? I pressed. The Morthborn's anger was rising. The stone at my throat was no longer cold. It was burning. Hot as it had been in the courtyard at Ashenford. I looked at the wolves behind Vale. And then I saw her. Third from the left. Black clothing. Rust-colored eyes. The Vorkai woman. She was with him. She had never left. She was standing in his retinue as calmly as if she belonged there. Because she did. You brought the Vorkai here, I said. Vale's composure cracked, slightly briefly. They work with me, he said. Carefully. You sent them to kill me, I said. And now you're standing in my courtyard offering to protect me. I let that sit for exactly 1 second. That's not strategy. That's insult. His gray eyes hardened. The first real emotion I had seen from him. The situation changed, he said. When Morthane didn't fall with the Vorkai, I recalculated. You recalculated, I repeated. Yes. And if I'd been easier to kill, I said, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He didn't answer. Because the answer was no. We wouldn't be. I looked at him. At his coalition. At the woman with the rust-colored eyes who had put a knife within inches of my face. And I felt Morthane rise. Not explosively. Not like the courtyard. Slowly. Like a tide. Like something that had finally found its direction. I'm going to tell you what I see, I said. My voice was different. Not louder. Deeper. Like the hum in the chamber below. I see a wolf who took real pain and real history and built it into a weapon, I said. Who tells true things in the service of what will be, in the end, the same hierarchy with different wolves on top. Vale's jaw tightened. That's not. I'm not finished, I said. He stopped. The courtyard was very quiet. The old bloodlines were suppressed, I said. Yes. The alpha hierarchy has taken what didn't belong to it. Yes. My mother was destroyed by men who used her fear against her. I paused. Every word of it is true. And none of it gives you the right to decide what Morthane is for. Because Morthane is not yours. It was never yours. and it is not a flag to march under. I looked at the wolves behind him, not at Vale, at the ones who had followed him here. If you have real grievances, I said, they will be heard. By me. In the 4 kingdoms. On the record, in front of every Alpha Council. I felt the warmth moving through my hands. But I will not stand as anyone's emblem. Not his. Not yours. If I stand as myself. Silence. Total, weighted silence. Vale looked at me for a long moment. Then at his wolves. Then at Draven. This isn't over, he said. No, I agreed. It's not. He held my gaze for one final second. Then he turned. And something went wrong. The Vorkai woman moved. Not toward me. Not toward Draven. Toward Sable. I don't know what she intended. A hostage. Leverage. A contingency plan. But she was fast, terrifyingly fast. And Sable was old and small and standing alone near the wall. I didn't think. Morthane moved. But differently this time. Not a wave. Not a concussive release. A thread. Precise. Targeted. It shot from my palm like a line drawn in light and hit the Vorkai woman between one step and the next. She stopped. Completely. Not thrown. Not knocked down. Stopped. Frozen mid-stride, her body rigid, her rust eyes wide. The courtyard erupted. Draven's wolves moving, Vale's wolves shifting, Herrick's sword clearing its scabbard. Hold. My voice. Draven's voice. We said it at exactly the same time. Both sides stopped. I walked across the courtyard. To the Vorkai woman. She couldn't turn her head. Her eyes tracked me, terrified, furious, helpless. You came to kill me twice, I said quietly. I'm going to let you go. And you're going to tell everyone you work for, and everyone you answer to, what you felt just now. I held her gaze. Tell them Morthane is awake, I said. Tell them it's controlled. And tell them the next person who raises a blade toward Sable, or toward anyone under my protection, will not be let go. I released her. The rigidity left her body all at once. She stumbled, caught herself. She turned and looked at me. Her rust eyes were no longer professionally empty. They held something naked and raw. She turned and walked to Vale's side. Said something very quietly that I couldn't hear. Vale looked at me one final time. Then he turned and walked out of the gate. His 40 wolves followed. The gate closed. And I stood in the moss-covered courtyard with warmth fading from my palms and realized my hands were not shaking. For the first time in my life, my hands were not shaking. Behind me, Sable made a small sound. I turned. The old woman was looking at me with those between-color eyes, very bright. Your mother, she said softly, would have wept. From fear? I asked. From relief, she said. She always wanted this for you. She just didn't live to see it. I pressed my hand to the carved stone. It was warm, steady, like a heartbeat that had finally found its rhythm. That night, Thornwall was quiet. Not the tense quiet of before. The watchful, held-breath quiet of waiting for danger. A different quiet. The quiet of aftermath. Of something having passed and something else not yet arrived. I sat alone in the chamber beneath the fortress. The vain keep. The walls glowed with their sourceless light. The names of my ancestors cut deep into the stone around me. I had a torch anyway. Not for the light, but for the company of the flame. I was thinking. Not about Vale. He would come back, or he wouldn't, and either way there was a plan in place. Not about the Vorkai, or Aaron Vale's army, or the fractured pack councils. I was thinking about what Sable had said. She always wanted this for you. My mother, who had carried this same fire and burned in it, who had died not knowing if what she was leaving me was a gift or a sentence. I pressed my back against the wall and let the names around me do what they did. Ground me in something larger than my own fear. I was not the first. I would not be the last. I was a link in a chain that ran longer than the 4 kingdoms themselves. The Morthborn appeared at the edge of the chamber. No warning. It was simply there, as if it had always been there, and I had only just become able to see it. It settled at the far side of the room, its great dark body folding into a restful posture. Its red eyes found mine. You did well, it said. I did what seemed right, I said. That is what doing well means. I looked at it for a moment. What are you really? I asked. Not what Sable said. What do you say? A pause. Long and thoughtful. I am what Morthane becomes when it has enough room, it said. I am not separate from you. I am the part of you that has always known what you are, even when you did not. The part that was waiting. Yes. For 22 years. You needed 22 years, it said. You needed to know what it was to have nothing, to be told you were nothing, so that when you had everything, you would know the difference. A pause. Power given to the already comfortable is wasted. Power given to the one who knows what powerlessness costs, that is something else. I sat with that. Will it always be like this? I asked. The control. Is it permanent or? It requires maintenance, the Morthborn said. Like any living thing. It will grow easier with practice. It will grow larger with time. You will find new edges, new limits. A pause. And sometimes you will lose the edge. And you will have to find it again. What happens when I lose the edge? I will be here, it said simply. I looked at the great black creature across the chamber. Thank you, I said. It blinked, slow, ancient, almost amused. Then it faded. I sat alone in the glowing chamber and breathed. In. Out. The warmth behind my ribs, steady. Real. Mine. I was on my way back up through the passages when I found Draven. He was sitting on the stone steps midway up. Not coming down, just sitting. His fur cloak around his shoulders, his arms resting on his knees. He had a torch balanced in the bracket on the wall above him. He looked up when he heard my footsteps. I was going to check on you, he said. I'm fine, I said. I know. He paused. I still wanted to check. I stopped on the step below him. We were briefly at eye level with each other. Those gold eyes close now. The forge fire color, softer in torchlight. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. What you did in the courtyard, he said. The control. Sable said it was beyond what she had hoped to achieve in 3 days. Sable undersells herself, I said. She taught me well. Sable taught you, he said. What you did was yours. A silence. The kind that had weight in it. I owe you an apology, he said. I looked at him. For coming to Ashenford to kill me, I said. Yes. He held my gaze. And for the summit. For your mother. He paused. I know saying I was 17 doesn't change what happened. No, I said. It doesn't. But I'm saying it anyway. Because you deserve to know I'm aware of the debt. He paused. And because I intend to spend however long this takes making different choices. I looked at this man. This king who told me hard truths without decoration. Who had ridden through the dark to protect me. Who sat on cold stone steps to check that I was all right. I don't forgive easily, I said. I know. But I don't hold things forever either, I said. There's too much to do. Something in his expression shifted. Quiet. Deep. Like a door that had been held shut, allowing itself to open, slightly cautiously, 1 inch. What you said in the courtyard, he said. That neither of us had spoken to you before deciding what you should be. Did it land where I meant it to? I asked. Yes, he said. And you were right. He looked at me. What do you want? He asked. Not what the situation demands. Not what Morthane needs. You. It was such a simple question. No one had ever asked me it before. The silence stretched while I found the honest answer underneath all the others. I want the pack councils to hear the border wolves' grievances formally, I said. On the record. With someone who carries old power present to make sure it can't be buried again. Done, he said. Without hesitation. I want the Vane bloodline formally recognized, I said. Not as a weapon or a threat. As a lineage. A history. Done. I want Sable protected, I said. Thornwall recognized as sovereign ground. Done. I looked at him. And I want a seat at the council, I said. Not as a symbol. As a voice. A pause. Longer than the others. Not hesitation, wait. The weight of understanding what he was agreeing to. Done, he said. He held my gaze. Anything else? I looked at the gold eyes in the torchlight. At the line of exhaustion under them. At the complicated, careful, difficult man behind them. Not tonight, I said. Something softened in his face. Small. Real. Get some sleep, he said. You too, I said. I climbed past him up the stairs. I didn't look back. But I heard him. The quiet sound of him staying on those steps for a moment longer before following. Like a man who needed 1 more minute of the dark before returning to everything the light required of him. I understood that. I was beginning to understand quite a lot about him. And that, the understanding itself, was more frightening than anything Aaron Vale had brought to the gate. 1 week later, Draven called the summit. Not the traveling kind. Not a procession moving through territories, collecting tribute and performing power. A real one. A gathering. Every Alpha Council. Every pack representative. Every old bloodline that still had a voice. He sent the calls from Thornwall, with my name alongside his. By the authority of the crown and the Vane bloodline, on behalf of the old power restored, you are called to convene. Sable read it over his shoulder and said nothing, but she nodded, once, which from her was equivalent to a standing ovation. The responses came over the following days. Most came. Some came reluctantly. A few sent word that they were waiting to see which way the wind blew. 3 of Vale's border pack leaders sent word that they would attend, not as allies of the crown, but as independent voices. That was enough. That was the beginning. The summit convened in the great hall of Thornwall, which was larger than it looked from outside. Another ancient mystery of the fortress, space that seemed to expand without explanation. Long stone tables, torchlight, the smell of pine and wood smoke, and the particular tension of many powerful wolves in one room trying to maintain composure. I sat beside Draven at the head table. Not behind him, not at a distance. Beside, I wore the carved stone at my throat. I wore a cloak of dark gray wool, lined with fur. I wore the bone-handled knife at my hip. Finally, after 22 years, a blade I was allowed to carry. I looked out at the room. Alphas and pack leaders, and old blood representatives. Wolves who had more power in their smallest gesture than I had possessed in my entire life 3 weeks ago. They were looking at me. All of them. With expressions ranging from wariness to curiosity to, in a few cases, something that might have been hope. I thought about the stream at Ashenford. The cold water. The heavy urns. The corridor where Clara walked through me and my herbs scattered across the stone. I thought about Marta's hands around mine. Be careful of powerful men. I thought about the chamber below this hall, and the names of every Vane who had come before me, and the warmth that had pulsed back when I pressed my mother's name. I thought about being 6 years old, and hearing that my wolf had not answered the first call. And I thought about what the Morthborn had said. Power given to the one who knows what powerlessness costs. That is something else. Draven stood. The room settled. We are called here, he said, not to perform power, not to reassert hierarchy for its own sake, but to examine what we have built and be honest about what must change. He looked around the room. The old bloodlines existed as a check on the Alpha Order. That check was deliberately, systematically dismantled. Not by accident. Not by necessity. He paused. By fear. By the fear of those in power that something older than them still had the right to speak. Silence. That ends today, he said. He sat down and looked at me. The room looked at me. I stood. My hands were steady. The warmth behind my ribs rose. Not explosively, not as a weapon. Just present. Constant. Real. Mine. My name is Lena Vane, I said. 3 weeks ago, I was an Omega in a mountain pack. I carried water and mended furs and tried very hard to be invisible. The room was very quiet. I was told all my life that I was the weakest wolf in any space I entered. I let that sit for a moment. Those people were not wrong, by any measure they knew how to use. A murmur. But they were measuring the wrong thing, I said. I looked at the border pack leaders. The 3 who had come from Vale's coalition. Wolves who had real grievances. Real losses. Real anger. I hear you, I said. Directly to them. I am not going to stand here and tell you your anger is misplaced. It is not. What was done to the old bloodlines, to the border territories, to every wolf who didn't fit the hierarchy's preference. That was real and it was wrong, and it will be examined openly in this room today. I looked across the full room. But I will tell you what Morthane is not, I said. It is not a war flag. It is not leverage. It is not a symbol to march under or a threat to hold over each other. The warmth moved through my hands. I didn't fight it. I didn't reach for it. I simply let it be what it was. Light gathered at my palms, not blazing, not violent. Soft, clear, like the glow in the walls of the chamber below. Ancient. The room went very still. It is this, I said. A living thing. Old as the moon. Older than kingdoms. It doesn't care which side of a border you were born on. It doesn't care about alpha hierarchy. I looked at the light in my palms. It cares about truth, I said. And the truth is that every wolf in this room has been failed by the structures we were handed. I looked up. So let's build something that doesn't fail us. What followed was not beautiful or simple. It was 8 hours of argument, counterargument, grief expressed as anger, anger expressed as demands, demands met with defensiveness, defensiveness slowly, painfully, giving way to listening. I spoke when I needed to. I was silent when that was more useful. I was wrong twice and said so directly. Draven was wrong once and said so, which made the room go silent for a full 10 seconds before something loosened in the collective temperature. Harik took notes with the focused expression of a man who had waited years for this particular meeting to become possible. Sable sat at the far end of the table and said almost nothing. But twice, when the room was about to split apart, when two opposing leaders were on their feet, and the temperature was becoming something that might end in shifted wolves and drawn blades. She looked at me, and I found the thread. The Morthane thread, precise, not overwhelming, and I let it move gently through the room. Not compulsion, not force, something quieter. Ground. It gave them ground. A moment of feet finding floor, of breath finding rhythm. Both times, the wolves who had been about to escalate paused, looked at each other, and found, not agreement, but the capacity to keep talking. That was enough. At the end of 8 hours, they reached a framework. Not a solution, a framework. A structure for hearing grievances. For formally recognizing old bloodlines. For reviewing border territory rulings. 3 of Vale's pack leaders signed it. Not all 3, but 3. And as they signed, I felt something shift in the room. Not victory. Not resolution. Beginning. The feeling of a door cracking open instead of swinging shut. As the room emptied slowly into the dark winter evening outside, I stood at the Great Hall's window. The gray spine peaks were visible in the distance. My mountains. Ashenford's mountains. Harik appeared at my shoulder. Vale will hear about this by morning, he said. I know. He'll have to recalculate. He will, I said. He's good at that. Is that a compliment? It's an observation, I said. He's not finished. Neither are we. Harik was quiet for a moment. You did well today, he said. Stiff, as if the words cost him something. Thank you, I said. He nodded once curtly and walked away. High praise from Harik. I was oddly moved by it. I heard footsteps behind me, different from Harik's. Heavier, more deliberate. I didn't turn. Draven came to stand beside me at the window. We looked at the mountains together in the quiet. Ashenford's Alpha sent word, he said. While the summit was running. What did Brennan want? To know if you were coming back. I thought about the corridor with the scattered herbs. The corner near the east wall. The thin wool blanket. What did you tell him? Nothing, Draven said. I thought you should decide. I looked at the mountains. Maybe eventually, I said. Not to stay. But there are wolves there who deserve to know what happened. I thought of Marta. And some I owe an explanation to. We can arrange it, he said. We. The word, used without performance or calculation. Natural. Easy. Like it had always been there. I turned to look at him. The torchlight was low in the emptying hall. His gold eyes found mine in the dim. You kept your word, I said. I intend to keep it further, he said. I know. I held his gaze. That's what frightens me. He studied my face. Why? I looked for the honest answer. Found it where the honest answers usually lived. Somewhere under the ones that were easier to say. Because it's easier when I don't trust people, I said. I know how to survive without trust. I've done it for 22 years. I paused. I don't know what it looks like yet to survive with it. He was quiet for a moment. Neither do I, he said. That surprised me. The Alpha King. The wolf they called the Eternal Fong. The man who had never bled in 40 years of rule. Neither do I. Then we're even, I said. Something moved in his face. That door again, opening 1 more inch than before. For the first time in a very long while, he said. I find myself somewhere even. He looked at the mountains. I looked at them too. The cold winter peaks, sharp against the dark sky. The Morthborn, somewhere beyond sight, beyond the walls, patient and present and breathing. The stone at my throat, warm and steady. The names of every vein who had come before me, cut into the stone below my feet. My mother's warmth, pressed into the palm of a carved stone, and left for a daughter she couldn't stay for. I am here. I was here. You are mine and I am yours, and you are not alone. What happens now? I asked. Not urgently. Not fearfully. Just honestly. Draven was quiet for a moment. Now we do the work, he said. The long, difficult, unglamorous work of making the framework mean something. He paused. Together, if you're willing. I looked at the mountains. Thought about water urns and stone corridors, and the sound of footsteps walking through me like I wasn't there. Thought about the courtyard, the knife, the wave, the king on his knee. Thought about a chamber full of names and a warmth that knew me before I knew myself. I'm willing, I said. And I meant it in more ways than I was ready to name. The fire in the great hall burned on. Patient, ancient, constant, like something that had always known it would eventually be given enough room. Spring came to Thornwall slowly. The thorn vines put out leaves, the first green things, small and determined, pushing through the dark bark. The bare tree in the courtyard began to bud. I noticed it one morning while I was walking the ramparts before dawn. Old habit. The omega habit of being awake before everyone else. But now I walk the ramparts instead of a corridor, and I walk them because I chose to. And the view was the gray-spined peaks and the distant tree line and the first pale ribbon of sunrise pressing above the eastern horizon. The Morthborn walked with me, visible in the early half-dark, keeping pace along the courtyard below, enormous, unhurried, its red eyes holding the light. I had stopped being surprised by it. I had started to think of it the way I thought of my own heartbeat. Simply there. Part of the ongoing fact of being alive. A great deal had happened in the months since the summit. 3 formal hearings for border pact grievances. 2 rulings overturned by the full council, on review. The Vane bloodline formally written into the kingdom's living record. Not as a footnote, not as a historical curiosity, but as an active, recognized lineage with a seat at the council. My seat. I sat in it every time the council convened. I was wrong sometimes. I said so. I got better. Aaron Vale had not attacked. He had not reseated either. He was watching. The way a man watches when he's recalculating and has not yet decided if the calculation has changed enough to change his course. 2 of his border pack leaders had sent private word. Not through official channels. Through routes that left no formal record. They wanted to keep talking. I kept talking. Draven knew. I had told him. He had looked at me for a moment and then said, "Good. Keep me informed, asterisk." That was the thing about him. The thing I was still slowly learning to trust. He meant what he said. Both the easy things and the difficult ones. I went back to Ashenford on a morning in early spring. Rode through the gates with 2 of Draven's wolves and without ceremony. The pack had changed, or perhaps I had changed enough that everything looked different. Brennan met me in the courtyard. Formally. Carefully. The way you meet someone whose power you have recently become aware of. I kept it simple. The pack will be included in the new framework, I told him. The grievance process applies here too. If there are wolves who have been wronged by pack law, they have channels now. He nodded. Said the right things. I didn't stay long. Because there was one person I had come for. Marta was at the stream. Of course she was. She was always at the stream before the sun was fully up, doing the work that needed doing before anyone else was awake. She heard my footsteps and turned. For a moment we just looked at each other. Then she crossed the distance between us and held my face in her worn, practical hands. Looked at me. All of me. Top to bottom, like checking inventory. "You're all right," she said. "I'm all right," I said. "Good." She dropped her hands. Went back to the water urn as if the moment had not just cracked something open in both of us. "You've grown into yourself. You could have told me what you saw," I said gently. "Years ago. Would you have believed me?" I thought about it. The girl in the corridor with scattered herbs and steady hands. "No," I said. "Well then," she said. I stayed by the stream with her until the sun was fully up. She asked me nothing about kings or power or ancient fire. She asked me if I was eating properly, if I had warm enough clothing, if the people around me were trustworthy. I answered honestly. When I left, she pressed a parcel of dried herbs into my hands. Lavender and wolfsbane root, carefully dried, carefully wrapped. "For your pocket," she said. "So you always have something that smells like home." I held the parcel against my chest. "I'll come back," I said. "I know," she said. And this time, she smiled when she said it. The night I returned to Thornwall, Draven was in the courtyard when I arrived. Just him. No soldiers, no retinue. Sitting on the stone bench beneath the budding tree, a cup of something warm in his hands, looking at the stars. He looked up when I came through the gate. "How was it?" he asked. "Good," I said. "Hard. Good." I sat beside him on the bench. He offered me the cup. I took it. Hot. Herbal. Bitter in the way that slowly became its own comfort. We sat under the tree in the quiet. The Morthborn was outside the east wall when you arrived, he said. It settled when you came through the gate. It does that, I said. Does it? He paused. Does it respond to me? I looked at him. Ask it, I said. How? The way you'd address anything that deserves respect, I said. Directly. Honestly. Without trying to seem larger than you are. He was quiet for a moment. Then a low sound. Not words exactly, but a call. Something in his wolf speaking directly, without the mediation of language. A pause. And from beyond the wall, the deep, bone-felt percussion of something massive shifting, settling, acknowledging. Draven's expression, that contained careful face, opened in a way I had seen only rarely. Undisguised wonder. It knows me, he said. It's been watching you for months, I said. He looked at me. Is that? A pause. Is that reassuring or alarming? Both, I said. Welcome to my life. He laughed. It was the first time I had heard him laugh. Not the dry almost laugh, not the controlled exhale of reluctant amusement. A real one. Unguarded. Brief and genuine and completely undefended. It changed his whole face. I looked at the stars. Pressed my hand against the carved stone at my throat. My mother wanted this for me, I said quietly. Sable told me. She wanted, not this exactly, but this kind of thing. Being somewhere that fit. Having something to do that was worth doing. Did you find it? He asked. I thought about it. The long kind of thinking. Not the quick answer, the honest one. I'm finding it, I said. That's enough for now. He was quiet. Then, yes, he said. It is. We sat under the budding tree in the courtyard of the ancient fortress. The stars were very clear. The thorn vines put out their small green leaves. The Morthborn breathed beyond the walls, slow and patient and permanent. And somewhere in the stone below us, cut deep by hands that had known what they were preserving, the name Alara vein glowed with the same warm between color as the walls around it. Not gone. Here. Always here. And now at last. So was I. The fire does not forget the one who first lit it. It simply waits. Until she comes home.